Hello, people, and welcome back to this episode of The Tech of Tomorrow, the podcast where we believe that the real tech of the future are the humans building that future. My guest today, and before I introduce the guest today, please remember to follow the podcast on Spotify or Apple, subscribe if you're on YouTube, hit the like button. It really helps grow the show so that more interesting people come on the show. Now, housekeeping done, my guest. My guest today is somebody whom I met talking about company culture on LinkedIn. She is the founder and CEO of KnowMe, a platform that's helping coaches and consultants personalize customer journeys using AI. Maria, welcome.
Thank you so much, Sebastian, and thank you for the intro. I'm super excited to see where we go because we have quite a lot of overlapping themes of interest.
Yes, we do. We have a lot of common areas of interest, and let's get it started. Right? We met over company culture as a topic.
Yeah.
Specifically, I think we were talking about, correct me if I'm wrong, we were talking about working from home and work versus returning to the office. How
Yeah.
do you feel about that in this environment where with most companies from Amazon to McKinsey are asking their people to come back to the office?
Yeah. My opinion on that is actually probably going to be a bit surprising. I know a lot of people who really thrive at the office. I know a lot of people who actually miss it. Know a lot of people who loved going back. And great for them. But it's not the thing for everyone, right? I've never personally thrived working at the office, especially considering like all types of tasks, like anything focused, like writing a report back in the day when I was a consultant. There was no way I could have ever gotten that done at the office. And luckily, the companies I worked with did not force me to do that at the office, but they just told me to go wherever I get it done. So yeah, I'm all for flexibility. I know that for a lot of people, going to the office is a great way to kind of stabilize their day, get social interaction, etc. But again, flexibility is key. So 5 days forced at the office. Well, I guess it's a nice way to cut out people from the company.
It is, but we kicked it off right away with one of the first topics, but let's take a step back and walk because we had quite a long chat yesterday. So let's walk the audience through your background. You come from Finland and you are a pioneer of working remotely. So walk us through your journey towards being a founder of KnowMe, and then, if I may ask, give us more context about KnowMe.
Yeah. So, yeah, I never actually realized this before, but all of the companies I ever worked for were hybrid, or it was always like about output and not where you work. So my background's I'm a service designer originally. I spent I wouldn't say early career, but my career working as a consultant. So I worked with, all the big ones, pharma, banking, whatever you have that everyone who's a consultant sometimes works with, as well as startups, NGOs. So I have kind of like a full picture of having worked with all types of organizations as a consultant, and especially focusing on innovation and service design. So how to help people who are not creative, so their job titles do not include designer or any kind of creative titles, how to help them innovate and create new ways of approaching their products, the service, internal processes, whatever it is. So the early part of my career in Finland, in London, I I focused on helping companies innovate and non-creative people innovate, essentially. So work together. And then I moved kind of more towards coaching because I realized that that's what I was doing anyway. So I wanted to get trained. I wanted to understand it a bit better. So I moved to coaching for a bit. And now and for the last years, I've kind of been mixing both. So I do coaching with service design tools or approaches and service design with the coaching mindset. So, and that's also what KnowMe does and what KnowMe is all about. So we help coaches and consultants using both service design and coaching tools. So it's kind of like taking what works best from both worlds. I've always called myself like a tool agnostic professional. Like I don't really use very specific tools or approaches for anything. I listen to what the problem is and I find the right tool for that. So that would be like a short description of the approach.
So walk us through, some people who will be watching this podcast, they might be in IT consulting, they might be leading an IT company. So they all deliver something. But as with every expert, that's quite an expert, delivering something and designing it properly are two different things. So why does service design matter? Especially if you're like a numbers guy, why does that matter?
Yes, I love that question. I had that conversation a lot years ago. um, One of the most beautiful things about service design is that it's not only tool agnostic, really, but it's omni-channel. So it's all about like focusing on the problem, right? What is the problem we have? What is the problem your users have? Most often that problem is related to problems in the organization. So a lot of the work is actually internal organizational design, not just product delivery stuff. So it's really about like pinpointing where the challenge is, where the opportunity is as well, and finding the optimal ways of reaching that. So if you compare with like, for example, like a UI or UX designer, they have like a set um, format for their work, right? It's digital, it's online, it's visual. Service designer doesn't matter. It could be one-to-one call, it could be me meeting someone on the street, could be an AI app, could be an app, could be a website, doesn't matter. It's all about what solves the problem the best. So the numbers guy should care because it's going to be most likely optimized for the best business delivery as well.
So would you say you help me shorten the time it takes me? If I'm a technical person, do you shorten the time it takes me to deliver a result, or do you also make the result better for the end customer?
Both. I would say that it's very much focused on the end user experience, but most of the solutions are internal. Like I said, like they're the solutions that we would most often when I was working like full-on service design projects within companies. And I was usually always in kind of like a tech context because that is where most of us work and most innovation happens. But there's always a way to kind of take what you're doing and really make it better for the user, but the solutions usually come from within. So it's usually not about creating a fancier website, a more pretty picture. It's figuring out what's happening behind the scenes and optimizing that part and making sure that it connects with the user. So it's about connecting people both from the internal and the external with each other. It's all about
How,
humans.
how much does that have to do with culture then?
A lot, massively. Yeah, I can't even say how much. Most of the problems that we solved were internal process things that got solved along the way. So often if there's like in the service journey for
Mhm.
the user, there's a problem in one point, wherever that touch point might be. Most likely is that the challenge is internal. So someone's not communicating to the right people, something's not going to the right person, there's some kind of gap within communication. It's usually always related to the internal organizational challenges. So when you fix those things, you bring people together, everyone knows what is supposed to move where, you usually get a rather smooth experience for the user as well, because everyone knows where the problems or how the problems might be solved in the internal side.
So in your experience, how many companies, let's say out of 10, how many companies have a culture issue and don't know it? Have a communication issue internally and don't know, and that's affecting maybe their quality with clients?
I might regret this, but I would say that 9 out of 10.
Why should you
Some
regret
know
that?
it.
Most companies suck. That's why we
Yeah.
come into place as consultants. I'm sorry, just that's the reality is reality, right? Something I heard yesterday, the truth hurts, but you cannot change it. It is what it is. Okay, back to the question though. 9 out of 10, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's some companies know it. Like they have awareness of it and they are working on it, but there are a few things that really like play there, which is people do not necessarily feel safe to communicate their real feelings. And the other one is that people might not even know how they feel and they might not know what they need. So when we have these like, polls about like employee satisfaction, for example, and you're asking, what would you like to have? I mean, just going back to the Ford example, like no one in the time of horses would have asked for a car because that wasn't on their radar. So the same way when you're asking your employees, like, what do you want us to make better? They don't necessarily know. Like, there's no answer that they can give to that. So it's not really a lack of effort often. It's just that we're asking the wrong questions, and we're not really, yeah, focusing on the right things.
Who's in charge though? If I'm the CEO of a company
Yeah.
and I know there's a problem, because I do believe that yes, most businesses suck. The top 5% are those who know there is a problem and need to fix it. That is true for what you do and for what I do. That's the top 5%. The top 1% are those who knew there was an issue and fixed it and keep working so that the issue doesn't come back. Now, let's say I'm in the top 5%. I'm aware that there's a problem. Who do I put in charge of that? Because if you're the CEO, you probably don't have time to be asking around the people, hey, what do you need? Especially if they don't know what they need. So who takes charge of that? Who do you interact with in projects?
That's a good question. I work a lot with either, it really depends, because again, titles are a bit messy. Now I work mostly with startups, so everyone has a different title regardless of what they do. HR, tech leads, could be even CTO, who it's the person who cares about the people, who is somehow, for whatever reason, the one that cares about how the people are doing. And it doesn't really matter what that title is. Quite often, it's actually the CTO, even though that's not in their job description. But it's just that person who really wants to make things work. And they take the initiative to actually change it. So I would say that it's anyone from CTO to HR, depending on the company, and yeah, usually the person that feels the pain or sees the pain of the people on the ground, who then takes it. But I would pick someone who's very much action oriented. There's no need for more reports. There's a bigger need for understanding what the problem is, making some kind of change, and evaluating that change and making it better. It's all about like the iterative process, right? It's not about getting it right the first time. Nothing's going to be perfect, and everything's going to change over time anyway. So just finding someone who can turn those actions into a cycle of growth over time.
How you mentioned something interesting, which is that sometimes you talk to people inside a company and they don't know what they need. How do you fix that? Because humans inside a company, first of all, they are different from who they are in their life. And if they don't know what they want, you're adding a layer of complexity. So how do you overcome that? It sounds pretty difficult.
Yes. I used to have a product which I'm actually now recreating with AI, which really helps people understand where the challenges are in their workspace. Because sometimes it might be a matter of like well-being, sometimes it's tools and processes, well-being, ways of working. It can be really hard to differentiate the symptoms from the core challenges. And I think that's the key thing. We can often see what the symptom is. So we can see that we're not happy, for example, or we're burning out. But what is way harder to see and understand is like, where is that coming from? And I think that's where kind of like more holistic approaches of understanding where people are struggling, where the blockers are, comes in really handy, because it's not that people don't know that they're not feeling great. They just might not know exactly why. And when you have that insight into a team, for example, you start being able to actually draw those like one, put those together and see that, okay, most people in this team seem to be struggling with like a relationships issue, for example, gives indication of something, whereas in the other teams, it might be about something else.
Am I wrong? Or the moment you put AI into the equation, it means something that's very cool for executives and maybe like a CTO, which is the process is actually data driven, right? You can turn these things into data. So how long ago did AI enter your workflow in this way that you made it the core of it?
That was, funnily, I think it was February or January this year, because I lost my original product, right, which was a survey. And the company I was working with who hosted it, they went bankrupt. And I was like, okay, so either I rebuild what I had, which was a really kind of comprehensive survey format that was working super well. But I was like, no, this way of doing this thing is not going to be the future of doing this. So instead, I chose to focus on AI, not really knowing what it was or how I might use it. But yeah, so since then, I've been building things with AI. And yeah, it's actually crazy the things that we can do now. The version of even that early product that I'm building now, I could have not even asked for in February because I was so kind of clouded by the old thinking of like, I need segments, I need to put these people into these groups or these quadrants. With AI, I don't need that. It's actually each individual. I don't need to target, I don't need to segment. The person gets like actually personalized suggestions and activities for them instead of some, predefined target audience that I created from something. So that's crazy. AI is really changing the game on that field, I would say.
I love personalization. It
Yes.
must feel great. And which brings me to so many topics here.
Mm.
The How do we measure culture in the end? Everything goes well. You fix the problems. How do we measure that?
Well, that's a good question. I would say that it really depends on the types of problems. I think like in general, measuring culture is never like a short-term thing. Like you can't really measure a lot of things that are quite complex in a very short period of time. You can try, but whether or not that actually gives you anything worth having is a different question. I think culture is something that you just see over time in everything. How fluid is it? How calm and confident are people in your company? When you have a good company culture, things just flow in a kind of organic way. When there is a problem, it comes to attention, it's fixed. Like there's people talk to each other, there's no like kind of back end politics. It's just a feeling of flow, I would say, which is again, how do you measure flow? I mean, I'm sure you can, but measuring it with just one aspect is, yeah, probably not the best use of our time.
Agree. Bring this, cultures are a complex thing because a bunch of humans trying to innovate together. And we're going to get back to innovation, hoping I remember. But before that, how do you, let's take it down one level of complexity. Currently, you're helping coaches and consultants.
Yeah.
And I'm a consultant. So what's the most common issue you see for consultants that you fix? That's something that immediately catches your attention.
Well, lately I've been having a lot of conversations, especially in relation to AI and using AI in their processes, right? I think one of the key things is that, I mean, it is an insane world out there when it comes to AI. I mean, there is so much stuff out there, like AI related stuff, products, updates, changes. Like there's, I was just telling someone, a consultant before this call, I've never seen anything really like even remotely the same speed of evolution as we're seeing now with AI. And when you're consulting, you're working with companies, you're working with your clients, I honestly don't know how you would be able to stay on top of AI on top of that, unless you're working on AI. So it's like there's the content, which is your consulting expertise, right? And that's the stuff that you should be focusing on because that's the stuff that you really know how to do. Hopefully you love doing it as well, or you like it at least. And then there's AI that can actually not only make it more efficient, but actually make you a better consultant. It can help you reflect, analyze what you are doing and why, and changing those ways of working. And that's what I absolutely love about the kind of AI products that I'm working with, is that it's not just about making you more lazy and automating everything. It's about making you kind of critically think and see what you're doing, why you're doing it, and if it makes sense.
That's interesting, right? Because I have often conversations with a friend about AI, and he's always focused on it's gonna take work from you, which again is fine. But there are things where I don't want to focus on reducing workload. I want to focus on
Mm.
increasing quality. For example, my content on social media is one of those. My client relationships are one of those. So I like more your perspective where you go, okay, this is making you better. That's a use case that somebody like me is more attracted to. So how does it make
Yeah.
me better? Probably just tell me.
So there are so many ways. So first of all, there's a reason why people work with coaches, right? And it's because there's someone else, and also with consultants, to be fair, there's someone else who's going to ask you a question that either you didn't ask yourself, or just the mere fact that someone else is asking it makes you think about it differently. And AI can do that. So trained AI can actually coach you. It can ask you those questions and go deeply into the personal things that you have. So, for example, I use AI every day. Like the tools I've created, I use them every day. I would not survive without them. And even though I've trained them, I still find it useful that it asks me to go through certain steps to clarify things for myself, right?
Mhm.
So it helps me reflect. It helps me question if what I'm doing actually makes sense and if it's useful. And I don't think I could get that with anyone except for like a human coach, maybe. But that human coach is probably not going to live with me, hopefully. But the AI is always there. Like when you have a trained coach that's going to help you reflect through all those processes that you need to go through, you have basically a coach living with you, but you don't need to deal with the fact that they're there when you don't want to.
I'm gonna play devil's advocate here because
Yeah.
people who follow me know how I feel about it. But what are you then saying that AI could replace a coach completely or a
Um,
consultant?
that is a very good question. I would say, and I'm a coach and a consultant, there is a large part of my work as a coach, the more mundane things. Like, do I want to be working with someone using my one-to-one time to figure out their priorities for the week? Of course not. That's not like the best use of my time as a coach. That's not going into my deep expertise. That stuff, super happy for the AI to take over. But there are things such as presence, especially when we talk about coaching, there's a connection between people, reading energy, reading body language. It's not merely body language, it's the way you are, it's the energy you kind of emanate, I guess. That is not going to be replaced by AI. That human connection, that feeling of being held or seen, AI is not going to really do that, even if it sounds empathic and it can guide you through thinking. And it can even help you feel things to a level, but it's not going to make you be somewhere, like be present. It's not going to make you feel seen on that same level that a human can be. So I would say that it just the same way that automation can take like the most boring parts of something really mechanical away from the process, AI can take the most boring manual parts of coaching away from the coaching sessions. So then in the sessions, you can actually go way deeper than you could have if you had to do those like more mundane parts of coaching in that session. Yeah.
I love that answer because I know somebody is gonna listen up to the point we talked about and it's gonna go,
Yeah.
wait, but why do I need the two of you then? I will just take an AI and have that coach me or consult me. So I wanted you to answer just to bust that
Yeah.
myth the moment it came out, which I love it. You know, there is this low bandwidth work that priority lists, uh,
Yeah.
scheduling, timelines. AI can do that. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna, this came to me as you were talking, but could I have, and I'm an author, so I try to codify all my knowledge into books. One is out and the other one is already in progress, more or less. Could I take all my content, all my knowledge base, feed it into an AI, and have a proprietary, hate that word, a proprietary language model that I only give access to clients so they can have AI me while I'm not there, and then they can bring more relevant questions to our sessions together.
Yeah. 100%. And it's not going to take you long if you have someone who knows how to build it. Yeah.
Okay.
But it's all about how you frame it, right? yeah, for that, AI is amazing. And especially because you own again, let's not go like fully into the ethics of AI or that side, because that's a messy, messy world. But because it's your book, yeah, it's yours to share, right? You can train your AI on that. And actually guiding and training the AI to not only that they have access to the information, but they have access to the questions that you would ask them. You train your questions for the AI. So instead of them like sending you a WhatsApp or an email or whatever it is, they can ask those questions from that AI that you have trained based on your knowledge. But I mean, that's not going to be able to answer everything. It's going to answer those things that would be slightly annoying or repetitive for you to answer, but it's not going to give the strategic full thinking and the kind of processes that went behind that book, for example. That book is just a tiny part of all that was behind it, right? So yeah, it's like this tiny nugget. I was just talking to someone before this call, and it's like AI is like an intern. You can train it on stuff. It'll know it like to a level, but you wouldn't put the intern like presenting to a client in the C-suite. So it's like you need to approach it as a human more than a product, because it kind of acts like a human
Mhm.
with all its flaws. And sometimes it's not quite there. Sometimes it's having a bad day. Sometimes it just does random stuff out of nowhere. But most of the time, it's amazing. When it's having a good day, when it's a good moment, it's trained well, it's superb.
I like that answer. Well, by the way, some big consulting agencies, like the big ones, they will send you a 21-year-old student to a CISO and still give advice that probably an AI could beat. So we are against that here. But use an AI in that case. It will also not cost you 6K per day or 8K per day. So just saying, replace McKinsey with AI, the world might be a better place with less corruption. Um, Back to the topic though. Innovation. Have it here. What's innovation
Mm,
for you?
ah, love it. It's one of those. So I'm not your maybe typical consultant. I was an innovation consultant, and I still can't really say what that means. I don't really care. It's for me, innovation is like you have a group of people, you have a context, right? A project, group of people, a problem, and you need to solve it in some way. And innovation is usually the word that gives that project the kind of permission to come up with something that hasn't been done before. Doesn't necessarily need to be new, doesn't need to be out of, the future, but there's the permission to create something that wasn't there before. I would say that that's probably the most clear answer I could give to what innovation is for me. It can be new, it can be different, but it doesn't need to be. Just the fact that there's potential for it to become something new is kind of enough. Because most innovation is not crazy futuristic stuff. It's just like you're solving a problem using something that the company or the team wasn't using before. And that's it. And that is innovation in my books, at least.
The big innovations are also compounding, right? It's not people never realize that AI ChatGPT didn't appear in 2021 out of nowhere. People were
Yeah.
talking about AI since the 50s and 70s, and people have been building for 40, 50 years before ChatGPT could become a thing. So innovation is actually, at least in my view, I don't know if you agree, but innovation to me is a series of very small incremental progresses until you
Mm.
finally get to something that's groundbreaking. Like, oh my God, this things looks like it thinks, even though it doesn't, but it kind of feels like it.
Exactly. Yeah, it's usually a lot smaller than people think, but it doesn't make it not innovation. Like innovation is not about making something wow, like I could have never imagined this. It's like if you think about the easiest way, so to say, to do innovation is like you're in a field, take another field, a field that's not related to yours, get a business model or whatever from there and bring it to your field. That's it. That's innovation. You're innovating on your field, but basically you're just stealing from another one. Again, it's
I agree.
it's like that's how it mostly works, right? It's just putting things together that weren't put together before, however big or small.
Here's a fun story about it. I have a client who works in game industry, tabletop games industry. And we work together consistently. But I think 2 years ago, when he first hired me, he was telling me about, his competitors are massive corporations that rule that industry almost in a monopoly way. He was asking me, how do we compete against them? How do we stand out? And even in the indie scene of games, how do we how do we outmaneuver all these other game companies? And he's like, and I go, just tell me more about your audience, about the people that play with your games. He starts telling me, and at some point he goes, and oddly enough, at events, there are a lot of girls who come to our tables, a lot of women that play, with our games, while the other tables are full of men because the industry attracts mostly males, like anime and tabletop games, right? Dungeons and Dragons is mostly male dominated. And that's where I go, hold on. Why don't we do what nightclubs do? Because like, what? Nightclubs, they will offer women free tickets. So the women come and they know that if the women come, the men will come and will also pay a ticket. Right? I go, why don't you just attract women to your tables, focus on them, and all the other guys who are also on average an audience of very shy guys who wouldn't approach a woman on their own, even for friendship, why they will just come. And that's what he did, and it kind of works. And that's taken from the nightclub scene.
Yeah, exactly. It's just borrowing from wherever, opening up your limitations of what's appropriate for a field, for example.
Yes, also something I noticed this year is that as people, we accumulate knowledge over decades, but we tend to compartmentalize everything we know. Meaning, I learned that in university, it's back there, I don't need it. I learned that at 15, I was too young, I was a kid, I don't need it. I learned that at 24, I'm 34 now. Back there, I don't need it. Instead, well, because I did it this year, I started connecting the dots of the stuff I knew. And I was like, fuck, this is quite powerful, because I just realized that it's not a compartment it's not a bunch of compartments. It should be a system of knowledge, a network.
Exactly. And its unlearning is probably more important than learning, I would say, at this point. Most of the tools that I use for myself, they literally just question myself. I just ask questions to question myself. Like, is this actually what I'm trying to do? Is this related to what I said? It's not often. It's just, yeah. It's just like we have these processes, we're used to doing it. You do your to-do list even. Like you just like put a goal, then you do your tasks. Do you ever ask yourself, like, do these tasks actually help me accomplish this goal? No, you just kind of trust that because you put the goal and then you put the task that is actually related. It might not be. And at least in my personal experience, it usually isn't. And that's such a simple example. So imagine how much we do that in more complex situations.
It's powerful. So sometimes I will write content or like write pages of a book, and I never write with AI, but I will use AI to make sure I'm not saying stupid things. Meaning, if I have an example or an analogy, I had one in the book that I have out, had an analogy about fleet managers of interconnected ambulances. Now, like, it's not a field I'm extremely familiar with. So I took the example, I fed it to the AI, and I told it, find everything wrong with this, be as critical as you can, and try to dismantle my argument here so I can improve it. It did actually a great work of finding weak spots. Like, this doesn't make sense for this reason. It's like, I didn't think about that.
Exactly. Yeah, we can use it to actually become smarter and not lazier. I think for me personally, that's the beauty of AI. It's not just about automating and, I mean, I'm location independent. I love having work-life balance, all about holistic life, not only working, but there are kind of like two things. There's like the amount of work and the quality of work. And AI can help with both, but especially with the quality of work. It can just make you a lot smarter, make you think deeper, not just give you answers.
How do you handle being location independent? We're running a company with having clients all over the planet. How does that work? Because, I
Yeah,
relate to the part of having clients all over the place. I'm not location independent yet. So how do you balance that?
that is a good question. As usual, I'll give an honest answer. Not very well. I don't enjoy it. So I'm a bit of a weird location. Well, I'm location independent. I'm not really nomadic, or I am on paper. I am nomadic. I need to admit that. But I'm just trying to find a place to stay with visa restrictions, etc. It's really difficult, I have to say, especially because I've chosen to live in places where, for example, just having access to really high quality Wi-Fi is not a given. I had a few months this year when I knew I was going to be in places where I didn't have good enough Wi-Fi to have sessions, so I had to adjust my client relationships in a way that I just didn't do sessions. So it does have an impact. I think anyone saying that it doesn't have an impact is either not doing video calls, or group calls, or just doesn't care.
Or is trying to sell
So
you a
yeah.
course about being living a nomadic lifestyle, and they need to sell you that
Yeah.
as an easy thing.
Yeah, and I think like because a lot of nomads are developers who can do actually a lot of their work offline or quite low bandwidth, it doesn't matter actually. If you're doing that, it doesn't matter that much. But whenever you start doing, for example, coaching calls where you have to create that space, that presence, like I said, there can't be stuff going on around me. There can't be like,
Mhm.
someone coming at me with questions when I'm in a call. If someone's sharing something really deeply personal, there's no excuse for bad internet and there's no excuse for disruptions. So it creates like very different demands. And I think that's something that we don't talk about a lot when it comes to location independence, is that there are different jobs and different professions that have different things that are required to make those function in the optimal way. So yeah, for developers, for example, or if you're writing, yeah, I mean, there's not that much of a problem. But for sessions, it does create a lot more restrictions, and not even going into like time zones and stuff. But
Yeah, I was about to ask that, right? There are time zones because
yeah.
my entire network is moving to Dubai next year. And I
Mm,
like the idea, I love it. The only concern I have is, am I gonna have to work at 2 a.m. or at 4 a.m.? How do you deal with time zones?
yeah. I am pretty set in. I live mostly in Latin America, right? The only place I really go is Europe occasionally. When I was in Europe this summer, after a long time, I did not enjoy it because I don't like doing calls in the evening. I know for some people they like that. They like focusing on the mornings. Again, we hear how productivity works for everyone, that in the morning you should focus. For me, it's the opposite. I love having my calls in the morning. I love starting my days with calls because it kind of wakes me up. Um, so for me, being in this time zone and working with people from Europe, or obviously in the states time zones, is optimal. But for example, I don't even mess with Asia or Australia. I don't even go in
Of course.
those markets or those time zones because it doesn't really work. And for me, having sleep, not having calls at like 11 2 a.m., it's a part of, yeah, like how I want to do work. I want to do work in the way that I do my best work, which just limits my time zones in a way.
Yeah, I had once a client from Australia, and the calls were always at weird times. It never went into the night, but it was always weird, like 11:30. And then I had another client, and that was a prospect. We took a call. He only could do it at 5 a.m. my time. I was like, okay, let's do it. And yes, it happens. So I understand the importance of working in ways that you enjoy and you actually
Yeah.
want to work. So
Yeah.
why South America?
Ah, this is a good question. One I've been thinking about for a few days because two people asked me that yesterday. Two people. I don't know. I mean, originally I'm from Finland, never felt at home there. When I first came to Latam, I just felt at home for some reason. It's not like I'm the same as everyone here. Definitely not. Culturally speaking, very different in many ways. I don't know. Just feels like home. There is a weird belonging that I don't really have in many other places. That's
That's
really
interesting.
the explanation I can give.
What has been the hardest cultural difference to overcome? Because I bet I'm Latino, I'm from Venezuela, so I bet from South America to Finland, there must be such a series
Yeah.
of massive differences. What was the hardest one, or the three hardest ones that you found being there?
Mm. One is trust in general. I trust everyone and everything. That's the way I mean, I've traveled alone in Africa, in South America, Latam, as a woman. I used to speak zero Spanish. Like, yeah, going to places where you shouldn't probably go. Everything was always fine because I trust people. I treat people with respect, so I get treated with respect most of the time. That's one. When I'm with my Latino friends or partner's family, they don't like that. They don't enjoy me walking around by myself, which I still do. I respect the concern, but I still do it. So I trust people. In here, generally, people don't trust people. Understand it, just refuse to accept it.
That's an interesting choice in South America. Because
Yeah.
if I was in South America, and last time I was there was 10 years ago, I literally got there with the mindset I cannot trust even my
Yeah.
own instinct to take my phone out while I'm walking on the street. So I don't know how you
Yeah.
did, and you've done it safely for how long?
Years. It's been like 6 years. Yeah. I mean, I left the first time I left home was when I was 15. So I've been traveling alone for a long time. I think one of the biggest things is that when you look like you know what you're doing, people respect it. Just look like you know what you're doing. And yeah,
Agree.
that's pretty much the way I've been going.
I once got lost in London, and I was informed later by my friend who I came to visit. She told me you were lost in Whitechapel. I was like, what's Whitechapel? And she goes, this is the most dangerous place in London. How did you not get robbed? And I don't know. I
I
just
live
walked
there.
through like I own the place.
I live there, yeah. Fun fact. Yeah, Whitechapel is fun. Yeah, I've been to a lot of places where locals in those places have asked me, you were where? But yeah, it was always fine. I do believe in like a certain, you should prepare and you should probably do more research about places
Mhm.
than I do. But also when you go with the mindset and the energy that things are going to be okay and you treat others with respect, people tend to respect you as well. That's the only real like lesson I've had. Whenever I felt more like scared or on guard because of advice I was given, things were not as good. So of course I don't do stupid shit, to put it bluntly. But yeah, it's like be mindful, but also everyone in the world usually wants good things. There are bad people everywhere, but most people just want to be left alone, to have a normal life, peaceful family, get work, get money, eat, laugh. That's it.
It's a fascinating perspective. I don't know if I would adopt it going back to my country or like nearby, but then I could try, based on my experience in Whitechapel, I just walk in there like it was the most normal place in the universe. Nobody even paid attention to me. It was pretty
Exactly.
fine. It's pretty normal, actually.
Yeah. The confidence brings all kinds of things. I think the other thing that is really different is the independence. I mean, I travel alone. I still travel alone. Even with my partner, I travel alone. My mom travels alone. Like that's one of the biggest things. In here, everything's done as a unit of family or,
Mhm.
you know, other people. In my context, we do a lot of stuff alone. And yeah, it's normal.
You
I
mentioned
enjoy it.
yesterday that you have a community of location
Yeah.
independent people. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, so that's a funny one. It's one of the only kind of programs that I have that are not about helping other people build things. It's like my soul project. It's the thing that all of my I mean, being a coach comes with a certain way of life. I am really into personal development and that's my hobby, as if you can put it that way. So the Four Languages is a community that I started I think it's like two years ago now. That's based on everything I've ever learned. So the four languages are the mind, the heart, the body, and the soul. And the community, we come together and we focus on one of the four each week. And then we share very deeply. The funny thing about everyone being location independent in that group is that it comes with specific challenges that can be a bit hard to understand if you don't live that way.
Mhm.
So there's like a really deep sense of connection. So even though we connect through specific areas of well-being, there's this kind of like uniting force, which is that we all struggle with the basics of life. No home, no stability, all that stuff, and by choice.
Yes, I think if it's by choice, the no stability part of it plays less of a role.
Yeah, it's a funny way. When you start doing it, it's hard to stop. And yeah, the world is interesting in the sense that it keeps changing, right? So people tend to have like a continent that they get stuck in.
Mhm.
When I was still in Europe, because I spent most of my life after 15 like living around Europe, it was easy because I could just stay. I just moved somewhere and I stay because of the freedom of movement. But now because I changed continents, actually visas and all that stuff, yeah, the outside forces started to
You
impact
have to
that
deal with
part.
bureaucracy a lot, right?
Yeah, and it's the visas are actually rather difficult, especially for an entrepreneur and someone who, because I don't travel, I actually become a resident in places,
Mhm.
which can, yeah, I mean, I wouldn't want anyone to have to do my paperwork. Let's put it that way.
I, people would assume that the Finnish passport doesn't make it that hard. Is it still that hard?
Um, it's not hard to travel, but it's
Okay,
hard to stay.
it's hard to stay. Okay.
Yeah, because the visas are the same. So, for example, most visas are made for normal people. So, people who either move to a place because of a job or because they are investing in a company, etc. I'm not. I'm an entrepreneur. I just want to live there. Like, there's no reason for me to be there specifically. And visas are not made for that. So, yeah,
So what do you recommend to
it's
somebody who's watching this and saying, "Hey, I want to live a nomadic lifestyle. How do I do that?"
okay. So, the first advice I ever say, and a lot of people ask me this, is if you have a life you love and you would be very sad if you lost it, don't do it. Because there's no saying that you can go back. You change when you leave. Everything changes when you leave. And if you have a life you love now, travel, of course, but actually taking that step to leave and to really open yourself, you change in ways that you can't really take back. Let's put it that way. And there's no saying that you can go back to the life you had. So I would be a bit, yeah, I would have a think about it.
I agree. I couldn't go back to either Venezuela or Italy and feel like I belong.
Exactly.
Yeah, you can't physically go back. Like nobody's tying your hands and you say you cannot come back to your country or your town. Of course you can. You're just gonna come back and you're gonna find the people that you knew and you liked. You're gonna soon find out I don't really like these people anymore and I don't understand quite why.
Mm. Yeah, there's no going back to the past. And when you change your life fundamentally, it comes with changes. And
Yes.
that's it. Not better or worse, or you don't need to like evaluate them on a scale, but things do change.
It's just that you develop
Um,
perspectives that other people don't have because they just didn't have the same experiences. So even if you had that experience, I used to have these amazing childhood friends and they came over, changed continents, moved to Italy. I spent some months with them. We were so different. And it's not their fault, it's not my fault. It's just that we were different.
yeah. And I think that's one of that would be the third thing, actually, that's really interesting is, and that's maybe not related to like the difference between Finland and Latin America, but the way that I see the world versus how most people see the world. There's no like good and bad. Like there's no, of course, there are things that are like ethically speaking or morally speaking superior to others, love, care, etc. But everything you see with people, whether it's in a team, whether it's in a relationship, you're going into another country, the more you travel, the more you see that there is no right way to do anything. There's just a million different ways to do everything. I think like trash collection is one of the best examples. There's not a single country where that's done the same way. Like every country does it slightly differently. And you would think that it's quite a simple thing.
I like that
So yeah,
example. It's interesting. Traveling does not traveling, moving around does change you.
exactly. No one usually thinks about the trash unless they're there for a while. So moving into a place is it gives you a very different experience of a place. You get to see the things that are usually hidden from you in the utopia of travel.
Yes, there is this thing that one thing is tourism and the other is immigration. Everything when you're traveling, everything looks so cool. I would like to
Yeah,
move there, and then you move, and like this kind of sucks, or I love it. You never know.
you never know. And it's usually both, and it changes. And yeah, it's it's definitely never the same.
So, what's your next destination?
Who knows? I will try to stay put. That is my next destination. But like I said, intention. Now I probably won't stay put because I said it out loud. But yeah, my my very much highest priority is to stay put for a while.
Okay, yeah, well, it can be also 6 months, so you never know.
Yeah, we'll see. If I'm still here in 6 months, I will be very glad. Let's put it that
Okay,
way.
so you like the place currently.
Yes, and also I want stability. I really like stability. I want to be in one place to actually have face-to-face interactions, start to run my community face-to-face as well as online. So for that, you need to stay in a place for a bit longer. So
And
that's
that's the
the
thing,
aim.
right? Every time you move, the counter is back to zero in terms of networking and connections. You move to a place, it resets, you need to meet people again, you need to rebuild, and that takes time.
Yeah, LinkedIn is the only constant in my life, I would say.
That's an
And the
interesting
community that I
perspective.
have. Yeah. All the other stuff changes. But yeah, so that's I would really enjoy being in a place so that I could do more
Mhm.
face to face with not just clients, but with people in general, just working with people and around people.
Yeah, it's important too. That I've been the last 12 months, I've been big on in-person networking. And I did notice because before that it was mostly remote and online and all over the place. But I did notice that there is a different quality to relationships that you establish in person. And
Yeah.
of course, yeah, I plan on moving again. So it's gonna happen all over again that I reach a new place and the social counter goes back to zero. I need to rebuild. But that's the name of the game.
It is. And it's also an opportunity to kind of start fresh each time. So yeah, it's like you build a different kind of network, and that's one of the things that I really enjoy having like online community is that you have that consistent community without being tied to a place, and then you can have that one-to-one or in-person community as well
Yes, agree.
if you
Online is
want.
powerful for that reason.
Yeah.
How big is your community currently?
It's not big. I'm keeping it really, really small. So every time we have new people coming, I will start splitting it into different groups because these kinds of conversations, and this also works for the AI stuff. I'm very focused on quality and depth in anything I create. So the groups are never gonna get more than 5 people strong,
Okay.
5, 6 people max, because you lose that ability to really connect deeply with people when you start growing groups too big. And for this kind of community, there's no point in like breakout room. Like I don't want to create a scalable community. I want to create a community of depth and having the same people. We have people who've been there for over a year and we've actually never met face to face and we cry on those sessions. Like
Wow.
it's yeah, there's a power in keeping things small sometimes and unscalable. There's a space
Agree.
for everything.
Agree.
Yeah.
My mentor and his community, we're less than 12.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of room to just being completely transparent and still feeling safe, which I guess wouldn't happen in a group of 50 people.
Yeah. Or in a group where people keep changing, for example.
Mhm.
Like there are so many, and this is also something that I really care about, and I think service design is really good for, is like finding out like which touch points should you make AI based, which touch points needs to be like in person, which touch points can you not have a free trial for? Like I don't have a free trial for the community sessions because that would break the safety of the group.
Mhm.
So it's like I will have a call with you and to see if you might be a good fit, and then you stay. There's just you can create safety and trust with people coming in for, like a free trial in that sense. But in any other context, completely fine. It doesn't break the trust. So that's the thing. Like no two products or services are exactly the same. So we can't really just take a blog that someone wrote about something and think that we can apply it directly in ours.
Which leads me to the last two things I'm going to ask you. Service blueprinting.
Mm, yeah,
Tell me more
that's
about that.
exactly what it. Yeah, it's exactly what it is. You have a service. You're probably curious about like where to use AI, how to use AI, where to use something else. Like my all of my services have like one-to-one and group sessions. And if I removed those and replaced everything with AI, that product would not exist. Like it would just be shit, to be honest. So the service blueprinting is all about understanding your service, both from the user's perspective and from the delivery perspective. And then seeing where are the things that you should stay exactly the way they are, and which are the perfect touch points to shift around or introduce AI in. Because not every touch point is made better with AI. It's just not.
That's good to
Yeah.
say and to clarify. So, how does somebody access your service blueprinting if they're
Yeah.
curious?
If you're curious, hop on a call with me. So knowme.co with the dash, CO. And yeah, it's always a session with me because I really want to make sure that it's the right kind of question that people have. Again, I never sell anything that doesn't make sense. And I will be the first one to say if someone's not a fit, if I can't help them, and I'll guide them to someone else. But yeah, service blueprinting it's an insanely useful tool because it just helps you see exactly what you have and make informed choices about which parts to move.
So, that's for coaches, consultants, and did I miss anyone?
Yes, I mean you can use it as a founder. If you have a team, the simpler version of it, I would say works for teams up to like 5 or 10. But then when we start having like bigger organizations, it starts to become like an actual full-time project to create that. So those are possible, but just more kind of it's a larger project to start putting all of that stuff together. Yeah.
Great. So, last two things. What is one controversial opinion you have that you're willing to stand on, even if people disagree with it?
Oh my gosh, I have so many. Probably so many. Mm, I have a lot of opinions that I both agree and disagree with myself. So, for example, AI as a coach, I think it's amazing. I mean, I'm in awe by the things I use every day.
Mhm.
And I think that sometimes it's better than me as a person, but sometimes it's not. So I think that's one. AI can and can't replace people. It just really depends on the use and the touch point, like we talked about before. So that would be one. And I guess the other one might be the I don't know how to put it. Don't leave home if you love your home part. If you love your home, if you have everything there, just stay. Just take a holiday instead of moving out.
I've never seen it from that perspective, and it's a great way to put it. Don't leave home if you love your home. Yes,
Yeah.
most people never consider that side because they just never experienced it. It sounds like moving. I think it happens even to people who move towns, right? If you're in a small town and then you go to the city, you will not come back to the small town the same person. So when
No.
you move countries or continents, it happens at scale. It's massive.
Exactly. Exactly. So just yeah, be intentional. I think that's the key. Like actually be intentional. I mean, I'm the first one to jump on things and just do it and then evaluate later if it was a good idea or not. But yeah, intention, like know why you're doing stuff.
Mhm.
And just explore, like try it out. Most things, actually, this is probably controversial. Most things you can't answer until you've actually done it. Most questions you can't answer unless you actually do it. You can theorize all you want, but yeah, it's never going to be the way you imagine. So,
It's like having a business, right? You can spend 3 months on a business plan and 6 months making theories, and then you still need to test them against the market, and the market might do one thing and dismantle your entire process that you imagined.
exactly, exactly. There's theory and then there's practice. And the quicker you go to experimenting, the faster you're going to get actual answers instead of guesses.
Okay, that's a good note to leave it on. Where can people find you on social media, online? give us where they can contact you if they are interested in service blueprinting or any of the things you do, or just in chatting.
I would say LinkedIn seems to be my digital home these days. So LinkedIn, Maaria Tiensivu. Maybe we can share the link somewhere close. That would be the best place, I would say. And also knowme.co can share the URL. You can just book me through there.
Perfect. I will include all the links in the description of the show in all platforms. So, Maaria, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you. This was a lot of fun.
I really enjoyed this conversation. People, this was the Tech of Tomorrow podcast with Sebastian Hidalgo and today, Maaria. Uh, follow the show, hit the like button, leave a comment, just support the show somehow so I can keep bringing cool guests like the one we had today to this platform. With that said, any last thoughts?
Just go for it. See how it is. Start building, exploring with AI, with your life. But yeah, don't leave home if you love it.
Don't leave home if you love it. I love that. People, I will see you in the next episode. This was a lot of fun. Yeah. See you soon.
See you soon.